Hello class, and welcome to this short remake video explaining how we can use structs and vectors. You will need to use structs and vectors in this upcoming assignment that you're working on right now. So this video is supposed to help you with that. So the first thing that we'll get started with is the struct. You hopefully learned about these in CS 135. And what is a struct? A struct helps package smaller variables together. So hopefully you remember something like that. And let's give you an idea on how structs, or what structs might be used for. So if you open up your assignment 1, which we're not going to do here, but instead we're going to open up a different file, you have a CSV, which means comma separated values. And on every row there is a record for a vessel somewhere in the ocean. The example we'll use here is a swimming event. Now, I don't expect you guys to be familiar with swimming events, but we can kind of take a look at one of these records here, and we can kind of put 2 and 2 together. So these are the headers. This is the header. This is like an Excel spreadsheet, and the names of all the columns are up here on the very first row. And so, in fact, in a struct, we can kind of copy this. And let's bring it into here, into our code. And so in swimming, events have all of this data associated with them. Every event has a name, a distance, a type of stroke. This is a measurement metric. This thing is called long course. I'll explain what that is. The event is either for men or for women. And then we have a world record for every event. Now let's explain this long course thing real quick. Though it doesn't really matter, I just want to give you an idea of what it means. Long course means, is the pool 25 metrics long or is it 50 metrics long? So there's 3 kinds of competition pools. Here we have a 25-yard pool. That's like a collegiate American pool. We have 25-meter pool, which is just a little longer than the yards pool. And this is just the general competition pool used throughout the world. And then you have your Olympic-sized pool here, which is 50 meters. So this here is a long course pool. And this here is a short course pool. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and make a struct for a swimming event. So we're going to type struct, and then we got to give it a name. Let's call it a swimming event. And every struct needs a semicolon here at the end. You can't forget that. It's like a declaration. And what are we going to put in this struct? Well, we're going to put in the names of the columns here. So the name of an event, if we come and look in here, it looks like it's a string. So here's the event names: women 100-meter back. So this can be a string. The event distance, if we go and look in here, it looks like it's going to be an integer. So we'll call this int event distance. The stroke, I'll tell you, is a string. The metric is in fact a string because it's either, yards or meters. So that's the metric we're talking about. It's either yards or meters. And then long course, I call it a bool. True, this is long course, or false, this is not long course. And then we'll say, this could be car, men, women. It'll be M for men and W for women. And then lastly, we have a world record. If we look here in this file, you can see that that's a decimal number. So let's use a float. So we'll call that float world record. So there we have a struct that we made. Now in our next class, we're going to open up this file and we'll read in this data. But for now, I'm just going to show you how to use it without the file. So this is now a type, and we can make a few of them in here. So we can say something like swimming event, event 1. And we can even declare another one. It's like a variable, swimming event, event 2. So these are declaring our struct objects. Now, what if I want to put data within these values? Every swimming event has a bunch of values. Looks like we have 7 or so. How do we fill these in? Well, we use the dot operator to access struct elements. So let's take event 1 here. And I'm going to bring in my swimming events here. I'm going to put it here on the left side. I'm just going to pull it over here. So event 1, I would like to do the event name. So I'm going to say event 1 dot. That's the dot operator right there. Event name. And what is the type of that? Well, it's a string. So we can say that that's equal to, I'm just going to come over here and copy it. Men's 50 meter free. Then we can say event 1 dot, what's the next thing that we want to do? Probably event distance. And what did I say that was? That was an integer, right? So we'll go ahead and put in 50. We can say event 1 dot, what's the next thing? Stroke and metric. So we'll say stroke is equal to some string. Event 1 dot metric is equal to some string. Event 1 dot, now what is this one? I think this one's the long course. So that's a bool. Now this first record here happens to be in long course. So we'll just set this guy equal to true. Event 1 dot men women we'll say is equal to men. Remember, it's a character, so we're going to use single quotes instead of double quotes. And lastly, we'll say something like event 1, what's our very last thing? World record. And I know this one off the top of my head. It's 21 or 20.91. The stroke is freestyle. And the metric is meters. So there you have it. Event 1, this object we've declared, is completely filled out now and it has a bunch of values in it. Now if I wanted to access those elements, I can say something like, same with the dot operator, right? I can say something like cout event 1 dot stroke. So there you have it. That's the struct. Now let's introduce our vectors. So in order to use a vector, we're going to bring in a library. Include vector. This is included at the beginning of your assignment for you already. Now, what a vector is it's a easy way for us to use a dynamic array. So we'll just call this kind of a dynamic array for now. What does dynamic array mean? Dynamic means resizable array. At least that's what we'll say for this explanation. So we're going to make a resizable array of swimming events. So in order to declare a vector, it looks like this. We're going to say some vector, and then in here we got to put our variable type. So this could be a string, this could be an int. It all depends on what type your array is. Then we got to give it a name. Say something like array. In this case, we want an array of swimming events. So I'll say this, vector swimming event. And we'll call it events. Now at this point, we have a an array, and it's empty. So now we want to put things into this array. So how do we do that? Well, I'll use the term push. And so whenever we're ready to enter something into the array, we'll say events.push to the back. That's what that means. Maybe I'll bring this up above, just so we can keep track of our array as we go here. And say we can say put event 1 in here. Push back event 1. Which is this one here that we just filled in, right? Now let's say I were to fill in event 2 as well, just for fun. And I'm not going to change this one up too much. We'll just make this the women's event. And I'll probably get this one wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a 2387 maybe. So event 1 is the men's 50 meter free, and event 2 is the women's 50 meter free. So here we're going to push back event 1. And so now, in this array, we've got one element in which we've got event 1 here. And in fact, we can keep track of the size of this array as we go by using the size function. So this one is going to print 0. And then if we see out this again, just after we've pushed an event in there, it's going to see out actually 1 now, because we've got one element in there. And then finally, we'll put in our last event. This is be event 2. And now we'll see out the size. And in fact, you'll see that it will print out size 2, because now we've got event 1 and event 2 in our array. So now we've got an array that's size 2. It has 2 swimming events in it. And now let's say we want to go through this array and print out every event. We're just going to use the event name for each event. So let's go ahead and write some code for that, and then we'll conclude this video. So how do we go through arrays? Hopefully you remember from CS 135, we're going to use a for loop. So I'll just say int I equals 0 here. Because if you remember how arrays work, let me just kind of put this over here. If this is our index right here, this event here is located at index 0, and this one is located at index 1. So even though the size is 2, we can only index at 0 and 1. So we'll start at 0, and then we'll say while I is less than, well, it's going to be 2 in this case, right? But let's go ahead and use events.size here. And we'll say I++, because we want to increment by 1 every time. So now we can say cout. Now we want to access an event from out of the array. So all we have to do is type events, and then we're going to use our brackets, just like it's a regular array. So I'll type that here. Use brackets to index vector. But remember, this is a struct, right? So if I just see out the swimming event, it's not going to work very well. I have to see out something special. So I'll use that dot operator again. And we'll see out that event name. And in fact, let's make this even prettier, and I'll say I. You'll see what I'm doing here, but I'm just going to say event I. We'll make like a nice little list. Maybe I'll zoom out here just a little bit. It's okay. So we're going to go through this list, and we're going to see out this I, right, to show us what index the event's located at. And then we'll just see out its name, and then in a little end line. And that's going to be the conclusion of our program here. So I will run this on Sally momentarily. I'll even log in to show you guys how to do that. But let me just remind you about what we did here. I reminded you about structs. And what are the few things that we need to know about structs? We need to remember how to declare a struct. We need to remember how to access elements within a struct using the dot operator. And here you can see I'm assigning values and I'm just accessing values. We also talked about vectors, in which you need to bring in a vector array or a vector library. And then in order to make a vector, which is just a simple way to use a dynamic array for us brand new C++ coders. So to declare that, we need to say vector, and then we use these cool little brackets here, and then we put the type of the array in the vector, or within these brackets. And then we give our array some name, and at this point it's an empty array. We can see out the size here. And since I'll be running this program on Sally, let's just go ahead and do this. So we can kind of see here what's going on. I'll just copy this here. Oops. So I messed that up a little bit. That's fine. That's fine. So here we'll see out 0, and then we'll push back. That's how we're going to add into the array. We'll push to the back event number 1, and here it is in the array. We'll see out a size, which will be 1. And then we'll push back event 2. Now remember, we're pushing to the back, so E2 is going to go right here. It's not going to go in front of E1, it's going to go to the back of E1. Then we'll print out our size again. And then finally we'll say list of all events. And we're going to go through this array and only go up to the number of elements in there. And we're going to index it using the brackets. And we're going to access our struct by using the dot operator. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll come here to Sally. Looks like Sally's nice and zoomed in for us already. So I'm going to cd to my favorite directory called test. And I'll clear our terminal. And then what do I want to do if I want to run my programs on Sally? I just have to come find this file that I saved. Oops. And drop it right here into this directory. If you're using a Mac, you will use FileZilla, something like that. So now that we're here, I'm just going to type ls to make sure that I've got my program here. There it is. And I'm going to type my compile statement, which is g++ equals std equals c++11. It's not equal sign, it's a dash. And then we'll type in our file name. So this is 2021 0120.cpp. We'll hit compile here. And everything worked just fine. So let's go ahead and /a.out it, and let's see the output of our program. So here we've got this printing freestyle. And in fact, if we come here in our program, you'll see that I typed here, cout event 1 stroke. So we printed out that freestyle. And then here are our sizes, right? Size 0, 1, and 2. So as we're going through the program here, we just created our array. We inserted one element to the array, and then we inserted a second element to the array. And then I said list of all events, and I printed the event located at index 0, and I printed the event located at index 1. Which one is the men's 50-meter free, and the other one is the women's 50-meter free. Remember that we only printed the event name, and that's it. So we'll cover more on Monday. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.